Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Premier Football Podcast on PFP Media. I, as always, am Rafe Garland and I'm joined, as always, by Joe Doherty. Joe, today is commonly known as Blue Monday, the first Monday of January when everyone goes back to work. Now, obviously, it's a Blue Monday for Frank Lampard today, but how are you getting on?
Quite honestly, Rafe, I've been much better. I developed symptoms of a mild head cold midway last week. I thought that it would be something that if I just didn't exercise and didn't drink for a day and took it easy, then the next day I'd be feeling fine. But it's been the complete opposite of a usual cold where you just take one day easy and then you're fine. I've just got progressively worse despite resting. So I'm not in best form, and my wife the same, and my son is home with chicken pox off crash. So it's a bit of a madhouse on this Blue Monday, but we'll see how the week develops, man.
Yeah, I can certainly sympathise. I don't know about our viewers, but here in Ireland right now, it's really, really cold and really dark for the last few days, and it's really just not been pleasant. It's not been a nice start to the new year in terms of the weather. Look, anyway, we'll focus on the football. There was a huge game in the Premier League yesterday. City piled on the pressure at the top, a comfortable 3-1 win over Chelsea. And I tweeted before the game, Joe, I said that regardless of the result, nobody would get any praise for what happened yesterday. It would all be about the team that lost and the pressure on the manager and you know, how everything is wrong and how it's awful and how it's a big disaster. And is that the case? Is everything wrong and terrible and disastrous at Chelsea?
No, yes and no. Yeah, well, the expectations last year were not very high. I even think Frank Lampard could have got away with not getting into the Champions League purely because of the transfer ban. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm quite sure that that's the case. He kind of had a free pass. This season is very different, but although they have spent upwards of £200 million on about 5 new signings, including 2 supposedly elite attacking players in Kai Havertz and Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech as well. Let's not forget. I suppose we have to realize that, with the exception of Ziyech, the other 2 are quite young, and all 3 of them are new to English football. So they have taken a bit of a risk in. I mean, this is the sort of thing they did in the early Abramovich era, wasn't it? They brought the likes of Arjen Robben in, Didier Drogba, Mattia Kezman. Who's the Romanian chap who got done for cocaine use? Adrian
Mutu.
Adrian Mutu. They were bringing in players from abroad primarily. Obviously, they did sign the likes of Ashley Cole and Joe Cole, even Frank Lampard as well. But they brought in a lot of players from abroad, and it didn't click immediately for them. Once they spent that money, they had to bring in Jose Mourinho, and then he almost in his second season he got them firing, and I think he finished second in his first. But I think it's fair to say that they would have expected a little bit better than this. Still yet to beat a team in the top half of the table, in pretty disastrous form in their last 5 games.
Not to mention that they were missing several of their first team through COVID.
City, yeah.
So Chelsea couldn't beat City, missing X amount of players.
And City couldn't even field a full bench. I think Lampard might be in trouble. He spoke very well after the game. He does seem to be in control of what he's saying. I don't know if you watched the interview, but it was very eloquent and everything he said made sense. But at the end of the day, it was a really poor performance. And I mean, they were really poor against Arsenal as well. They've been really poor of late in many of their games. And I would say that the most worrying thing is how Timo Werner actually started the season quite well. And you thought, all right, this guy is made for English football. And everyone thought he'd be made for English football because of his game, but he's just lost all confidence. He looks off the pace. He's not working as hard. And I can't even remember him having too many chances recently, which as a striker is really, really worrying. It's not like he's getting in the right positions and, you know, you can feel that it's going to come. He's not even getting in the right positions. And the front 3 yesterday just looked, what was it? It was Ziyech on the right, Werner through the middle, and Pulisic on the left. It was dreadful. In theory that should work, but it just didn't at all. City, it was very, very easy for City. City were very good, and we should get into that. But Chelsea, the fact that they made it that easy for City is something Lampard should be very, very concerned about.
You mentioned there how it took, even when Mourinho came in first time round, it took a couple of years to get the squad right and have them gelling and have them really performing at a high level. Now, then it was the case that it was more that the board that were signing players, and I was only wondering last night who has been signing these players for Chelsea over the summer, because they don't necessarily seem to have been bought to play together. We saw Werner playing through the middle last night. He's played obviously a lot of the season on the left, but he played 90 minutes to the middle yesterday. Kai Havertz doesn't really seem to fit directly into that team anywhere, and I wonder if Frank Lampard turned around to Abramovich over the summer and said, go and get me these players. These are what I need to complete the team. Or if it was a case that Abramovich said, hey, Frank, this is what you're getting, go and make it work.
As far as I'm aware, it's much less Abramovich who's doing that. It's a lady called Marina Granovskaya, who is one of Abramovich's most trusted associates, and she basically takes care of Chelsea Football Club and has done for quite a while. Petr Cech is obviously technical director, but quite how much of a say? I'd imagine that I
thought he was the goalkeeper for the under 23s.
Come up with the list. He is fourth choice goalkeeper, yeah. But yeah, he's technical director. So I'd imagine how it'd be good to talk to someone from Chelsea who has a Chelsea connection about this, or a Chelsea fan. But I'd imagine that it's him and Frank Lampard who come up with a list of players that they then present to Marina Granovskaya, and then she's the one who opens the purse strings and decides whether or not they're going to sign the players if it fits their mold. I mean, they're clearly signing big names now. They've gone back to that. With the Havertz was the most highly rated attacking midfielder in Europe of the last 2 seasons. Werner was one of the most highly rated strikers over the last 2 seasons. Ziyech has been scouted by many top clubs, and it obviously caught the eye in the Champions League with Ajax 2 seasons ago. So they've gone down the route of signing big names. And it's just not. Thiago Silva as well, of course, although he's in the twilight of his career, but it's just not coming to fruition so far. And Frank Lampard spoke after the game about needing more time to gel, and there are obviously people in this. He obviously needs to trim his squad down as well. It's very big, and there are still a lot of players who aren't wanted at the squad, and he still has. With the transfer ban last season, this is only really the first season that he's been able to bring players in, but I just feel that given the level of investment and given of the quality of the players that they have brought in, anything less than a chance. I mean, I'm sure they would have been wanting to challenge for the title. Lampard made it clear that wasn't the goal after the game, but if he came fourth last year when they really should have come third, surely this year you're supposed to be building on that and not ending up in 8th place in January.
Yeah, and I suppose if we look at how United have come on at the same time and progressed, that's what Chelsea fans would have expected from their own side. I wonder, having watched that game last night and watched a few Chelsea games this year, obviously everyone's talking about their forwards and Werner and Havertz and where the goals are coming from, but you look across that midfield and N'Golo Kante isn't the player that he used to be. And he can't do the defensive work for 2 men. And he was expected to do the defensive work for 2 men yesterday against Manchester City, and they were just completely overrun. I mean, I think it was almost naive of Frank, the way he set up his team yesterday. Like, this is still Manchester City, they still deserve a lot of credit as a footballing team. And if you're open when you play against them, they're just going to walk right through you.
It was I thought it was an odd midfield. It was Kante sitting in the middle, and then Kovacic to his right, and Mount to his left. I do think that Mount is pretty good, and you can see how he carries the ball from midfield to attack, and that's something that Lampard finds really important.
Here's the thing about Mason Mount. What position does he play?
He plays left centre mid in a 3 at the moment, but he's also played right wing, left wing in the 10. I don't know if he's played as a false 9. I'm sure he could be tried. It's difficult to pin down.
He's an attacker, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't playing as part of a front 3 or 4 as opposed to a midfield 3.
I think so,
because right now he's playing in the Jorginho Wijnaldum role. Wijnaldum's role is a ball carrying, a hard working 8, isn't it?
when Alan's role is to run and run and run and run and run.
It is, but he also carries the ball, doesn't he? He brings the ball from midfield to attack, and
yeah, he plays a lot of sideways passes.
Side.
Liverpool like to switch the ball quickly from side to side to try exploit the space like that, and his job is to turn on it and play balls from left to right and from right to left. He doesn't play a whole lot of line breaking passes forwards, but his job is to move the point of attack from left to right or right to left quickly like that. Whereas Mason Mount, I mean, we've seen him score some great goals. He's got great technique. He strikes the ball really well. He's really clever in and around the box, and I think that's his strongest area of the pitch.
Question for you: can you play Mason Mount and Kai Havertz in the same team?
Like, it would be an incredibly attacking team, and I think if you were going to do it, you'd have to play Mason Mount on the wing and Kai Havertz as a number 10. I don't think that you can play them both in midfield. Certainly not. Unless you're Manchester City and you're playing Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva in midfield. But it'd be the same as that.
Yeah, but there, I mean, that is a level above Kai Havertz and Mason Mount. I think it's fair to say. But
that's if the whole team is. Yeah, well, let's talk about City. Like, City were able to do that and have been able to do that because they are so well drilled. They keep the ball so well. They know they're going to have 80% of the ball more weeks than not, you know? And if Chelsea want to play like that, if Chelsea want to have 80% of the ball, then they can play Mason Mount and Kai Havertz in midfield together, you know? But if they're going to be strong at the back and if they're going to try break quickly and you know, put balls into the channels or, you know, put balls in behind to chase and try use that pace up front, that's not the midfield that you want. Then you've got to have a more combative midfield and be ready to give up the possession. And I think this is to finish on Chelsea, this is the issue that they have. They're caught between two mindsets as to whether or not they're going to be a team that dominate the ball and take the game to you, or whether they're going to be a team that sit back, soak up the pressure and try to do you on the break.
Yeah, and I think that I'm not. They kind of tried to go toe to toe with City yesterday, which you can understand. They were at home. They played a 4-3-3, and City played a.
That's the last thing. I think we've said this to you before. I think that Chelsea are really, really struggling without fans. I think that since Jose's first spell at the club, Stamford Bridge has been an absolute fortress. But since
it's one of the they're the only Old Trafford and Anfield aside, they're kind of bigger, but they're kind of the last of the football grounds. It's quite similar to Elland Road, if you know what I mean. It's about 40,000 seats, very closed in, very similar to what Highbury was like as well. And those sort of grounds are, you're absolutely right, they're notorious for being seriously tough places to go, especially when the team is in form. But you know, they just get on like Liverpool are at Anfield. I mean, even without fans, Liverpool are just imperious at Anfield. No one can come to Anfield and get a win in the league. It's what, 60, 70 games? They're going to break that record. It's quite incredible.
We said we'd talk about City.
Yeah, we did.
Look, we've given Pep and City a bit of stick on the show this year. At the start of the season, I tipped them as the ones maybe to drop out of the top four. I know they're a couple of games behind some of the other guys at the top of the league. Excuse me, but they've been going about their business really, really quietly. You know, they've not been losing games. They've been keeping a load of clean sheets. I know they conceded in the last minute yesterday. When I saw that lineup yesterday, I couldn't believe that they'd left Riyad Mahrez out. I was thinking he's one of their most creative players. You know, they're playing Kevin De Bruyne as a number 9. We've never seen him play number 9 for Manchester City before. This is absolutely ridiculous. Pep's overthinking it here. Look, we were both upset that he left one man off the bench because he could have picked a youth player and made someone stay. But aside from that, the team selection, you almost looked at it and go, wow, this is really weird for City. But you know what? It worked, and he was spot on tactically.
Yeah, it worked really, really well, and it kind of showed all of us tacticians, quote unquote tacticians at home, up for thinking that we knew better. What I loved most about that was that Kevin De Bruyne didn't play as a false 9; he played as a 9, and he put in a great shift. Scored as well, didn't he? Yeah, he did. Yeah. And City just looked excellent. It was a training exercise for them, quite honestly, Rafe. If they kept the ball incredibly well. I can't remember exactly the possession stats, but they let Chelsea come in the first half. They must have had about 70% possession. It was the most dominant display that we've seen certainly between two big teams this season, and they only have they're 4 points behind Liverpool with a game in hand, and 4 points behind Manchester United with a game in hand. So they're right in there. They win that game, and they're up into third place, and I would still tip them to finish second at the very least this season.
Yeah, and to more than Kevin De Bruyne, because he was brilliant yesterday. I think Raheem Sterling played really, really well too, and he's one that we don't give a lot of credit to on this show. I think his goal involvements over the last 2 years are up there with some of the biggest names in Europe. You know, the numbers that he's consistently putting out week on week. He nearly always scores or assists when he plays.
Well, he's been. Yeah, something happened there. I don't know if I was breaking up or if you broke up. You were saying about Raheem Sterling that he's been inconsistent or quiet over the last couple of seasons.
No. I said that his goal involvements are up there with the biggest names in Europe. He seems to score or assist whenever he plays. He's got something like 40 goal involvements over the last year and a half. He even when he's quiet or he doesn't look great, he's still constantly chipping away.
Still only 26 as well, so he's very much just coming into his prime. He's an excellent player. He's probably maybe Harry Kane aside. Jesus, you're right. Do you know his goals for last season, Rafe?
How many
in all competitions? 31 in 52 games. That's a striker's return. 20 in the league. I didn't realize it was that high. That's remarkable. He's not been quite as hot in terms of goals this season. 7 in 21 in all competitions and 4 in 13 in the league. But yeah, Raheem Sterling is very rarely left out of the team, and Pep likes to rotate his front line. He's the most important one there.
But as good as he is in and around the box, like those numbers show, what he does is he doesn't mind dropping deep and picking up the ball and driving at defenders and really creating problems. And that's where so many of City's chances came yesterday, was because the defenders had to step out and kind of engage him, because he doesn't give you an option. You know, if you back off, he's just going to coast past you, and he draws that tackle and he goes past you anyway. His pace is such a weapon, and his ball control is up there with the best.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of the best players in the Premier League. And like you said, one of those players who can carry, players who frightens every single defender, because if he knocks it past you, you're not going to get it back off him. He'll do you for pace. And he, like we've said so many times over the last few seasons, he's improved his end product to no end since he joined from Liverpool.
We've given Rodri a lot of stick since he joined the club, and I don't think he was especially good yesterday either. But someone that did play well in midfield was Ike Gundogan. He obviously scored and had another couple of chances as well. He's one that's kind of gone under the radar since he joined City a few years ago, but he's definitely a quality footballer. Yeah,
he is. He's a World Cup winner. He's an interesting one, because I don't think he's an automatic pick. I certainly wouldn't see him as an automatic pick if I was in charge of things at Manchester City. But I think any team would be a club a fool to turn him down. He's a really, really useful player. Quality on the ball, can make things happen, and he also works very hard off it as well. He's a very good midfielder.
Okay, right. Look, we'll move on. There was obviously another. Excuse me, sorry. There was obviously another couple of big games this weekend. Manchester United beat Aston Villa on Friday night. Joe, they're level top of the league with Liverpool now. On the last show, we were very critical of them. We said that they didn't deserve to beat Wolves. They didn't deserve the result the week before as well. Do you think that they deserve this result?
Not particularly. No, I think they're probably all right for the win. Dean Smith, Aston Villa manager, was quite upset, shall we say, about the penalty that was given. But in this day and age, if you allow an opposition player to get the wrong side of you in the box, any sort of contact. He was saying Pogba tripped himself off. He may have done, but their legs were right beside each other. So I didn't think he had too much of a leg to stand on there. No, I think probably out of the last 3 games, United were most value out of this one. I don't know what your thoughts on it were. Certainly more so than Wolves. I thought the Wolves result was very, very, very fortuitous, but this one was, I mean, it's still a very tight game. It's not like they blew Aston Villa away. It's not like they should have won 4-0 or something like that. At the end of the day, it was still a penalty that got the job done. And how many times has that happened over the past year? And this is something that we need to get into. Perhaps maybe we don't have the time today, and we need to do a bit more research. But why are United getting so many penalties? This is 15 penalties that Bruno Fernandes has taken and scored since he joined the club not even a year ago. It's
33 penalties in all competitions since Solskjaer took over a year and a half ago.
It's unheard of.
It's over a penalty every second, like I said, we will do second game.
Yeah, it's unheard of, and we will do a feature on this because it does require attention. it needs to be looked at because it doesn't happen. And I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy, or that what I want to find out is, what are United doing tactically to get so many penalties? I'm not saying they're diving, but the runs.
In a nutshell, they're getting the ball into the box, they're finding contact, and they're falling over at every possible chance.
What they're doing more so than they are getting the ball into the box, but they're getting fast runners into the box all of the time. And once you're dealing with fast runners in the box or tricky players in the box, I suppose you give yourself. It's very difficult to contend with, and that's why we will do more research into it. But just off the bat, looking at it objectively, yesterday, that was what I thought.
I can remember Liverpool winning a rake of penalties maybe a year and a half ago as well, where that's what they were doing. They were just getting Salah and Mane into the box, and they were getting them wrong side, and they were going over and winning penalties. And if you look at who's got the most penalties in the league this season, it's Leicester City, and the person that's winning all those penalties for them is Jamie Vardy, and he's using his pace to get into the box, get wrong side, and to go down and hit the deck. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to that, and something to do with speed definitely being a factor in it.
Yeah, 100%.
If you look at who's winning the penalties for United, it's Rashford and Martial have each won 7 of those penalties.
100%. That's what they're tasked with. They're tasked to run into the box at pace, and it's very, very difficult to deal with players like that.
Look, Bruno put the penalty away really, really well. He looks like a quality footballer. He's involved in more goals than he plays games at the moment, and I think he's won something like 6 Player of the Month awards since he signed for them last January, which is almost unheard of. Yeah. But
it's changed their fortunes.
Yeah, he has for sure. But I think you have to look around the rest of that team when you talk about them as potential title challengers. I mean, Villa were carving them open in the second half of that game. They missed a rake of chances. They were dependent on their goalkeeper to make a couple of big saves. And he's one that's turned his fortunes around. David De Gea last season was really, really struggling. I think ever since, what was the last international tournament, the World Cup in 2018, where he had a bit of a stinker. He struggled for form for a year and a half. But I think the pressure from Dean Henderson this year as the backup has almost inspired him to get his act together. But defensively, United don't look completely there. Jack Grealish was having a field day on that left side, just chipping balls in. Aaron Wan-Bissaka didn't know where he was. For the first goal, he was exposed from the quick free kick. He was exposed 3 or 4 times with naive positioning and diving into tackles. And then a couple of crosses from the other side, he ends up marking the centre halves, which seems to be his favorite thing to do. I don't know that they're going to win trophies with him playing right back. I think that Harry Maguire can be exposed for pace, and I feel like they're chopping and changing the left back too much, that they don't have a settled back 4. But Eric Bailly coming back into the team has been huge for them because he's a world-class defender.
I don't think he's world class. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think he's good. He's their best centre back, but I still
stay fit. But if he can get a run up, he's up there with the best.
He has shown that, but it's been a long time since he's shown that because of his injury problems. I do struggle to buy into any back 4 that United can possibly put together. And yeah, I know. I think the left back issue is kind of just they signed Telles, and he's kind of as good as Shaw in different ways. Maybe Shaw is better defensively, and Telles is better going forward. I'm not quite sure. I'd say that's probably the case.
They rotate Brandon Williams in as well sometimes.
Yeah, he's not great. He's not even left-footed as well, which is not what you want. At a club like Manchester, you can't. I know Dennis Irwin played left back for United for years, and he was obviously right-footed, but really, you shouldn't be playing and Phil Neville. Jesus, that was a time where they literally didn't have a left-footed left back, and they were winning everything. That's mad when you think about it. That kind of defeats my argument. I'll shut up instead. Let's move on to something else.
Let's talk about Aston Villa for a minute, because they had been the surprise package of the Premier League. What does this defeat do to them? Obviously, it resulted at Old Trafford, I think it was in Birmingham. A result in that game would have been absolutely huge. Either way, where do they go from here?
Down the table.
I mean, they currently sit 7th, and if they win their game in hand, they're level with the likes of Spurs, City, who obviously have a game in hand, and if they win, they're 2 games behind Leicester. If they win them both, they're level with them. So they're in and around Leicester, Spurs form still at the moment as we approach the halfway point of the season. I mean, they're not going to strengthen realistically in January, are they? Whereas you look at the teams ahead of them and you think maybe that they might have a player or two coming in. Could that be the difference in the second half of the season?
I'm not sure. I think it'll be difficult to get good deals done in January. It always is, with the exception of a deal like Bruno Fernandes, where similarly to Virgil van Dijk, you've done all of the groundwork the summer before, or even the summer before that. You know, it's only a matter of time before that deal happens. I think that any rushed deals, they usually don't go to plan. In January, obviously, you think of Andy Carroll coming in the 11th
What a goal he scored yesterday, by the way. I don't know if you saw it. He scored a brilliant volley. The ball dipped down onto the edge of the box, and he absolutely thundered it with the left foot, kept it low through a pile of bodies, reeling back in the years.
Do you remember his first goal for Liverpool? His first goal might have been the header against Man City, but he scored a volley in that match as well, which was absolutely stunning. And he obviously scored that great bicycle kick or scissors kick while he was at West Ham. He's got that in him. So yeah, but no, difficult to strengthen the January market. I think particularly for mid-table clubs, which Aston. I mean, if Aston Villa can finish in the top half of the table, that would be fantastic. It really would. They did great business this summer getting Emi Martinez in, and they're players who they have. The likes of Anwar El Ghazi, Jack Grealish has come on this season. He's definitely more consistent than he was last season. He's doing it in every game. I can't think of a bad game that he's had. And Bertrand Traore is coming into form as well. And Ollie Watkins looks good, who's come up from the Championship. So they look pretty good. It'll be difficult for them to finish in the European places. There's big competition there.
Okay, well, look, let's talk about your favorite team, Joe, and your second favorite team and your least favorite team, who went head to head, and Spurs came out 3-0 winners over Leeds. Leeds for the last few weeks, well, they got pumped by Manchester United 6-2. They responded to that with a 5-0 win, and now they've gone and lost 3-0. Is it the same story with them? Why do we bother talking?
There was also a 1-0 over Burnley.
Oh, well, that doesn't suit my agenda right now. You know.
I don't know, Rafe. I'm a bit disappointed in Bielsa, to be honest, because I mean, the games against United and Spurs, you don't set up to play like that. It's suicidal. You're asking for trouble. I don't know if he took confidence from the opening game against Liverpool, where they narrowly lost 4-3. It actually could have been more. Liverpool probably should have won more comfortably, and Leeds didn't have too many chances. But setting up and trying to play the way that they always play in Old Trafford and forget home and away, but against teams like Manchester United and Spurs, who are so lethal on the counter-attack. I mean, it's just really naive. I get it that he has a philosophy. I think that is great. That's what he's all about. But you can tell why he's not been more successful in his career, because he is unwilling to adapt how he plays. And I think he's fantastic. He's great. I really love watching Leeds play, but they were awful against Spurs. They were shocking. They thoroughly deserved to lose. They started well, then they conceded the stupid penalty and their heads dropped, and they couldn't get themselves back into the game, and everything they tried played into Spurs' hands. They only have themselves to blame. It was a really, really naive performance, and they have a lot of growing up to do, Rafe, if they want to be back to where they would consider they belong, which is among the top 6, 7, 8 teams in the country.
I think we've made the comparison before between this Leeds side and the Liverpool side of 2017-18 that were playing this ridiculously expansive free-flowing football. But that was more because Liverpool just didn't have any defenders, and that was all they could do was go forwards. But it was the year after that we saw Liverpool start to have success when they took a slightly more pragmatic approach to games. They still kept a lot of that quick attacking football, but they kind of learned when it was appropriate. They didn't just go hell for leather at every opportunity. There was obviously another team involved in that game, and as much as it probably pains you to say it, Spurs looked very good again. They did everything right. They grew into the game. They sussed out Leeds. They nullified pretty much everything Leeds threw at them, and they broke incredibly well, and they scored some good goals.
Yeah, they played exactly how I expected them to play. They let Leeds have the ball in the opening 15 minutes, sussed them out, and then were lethal on the break, and they were unlucky not to win by more. I wasn't surprised by the scoreline. I was listening to, I was doing a bit of cooking when the match was playing, so I was listening to it on the radio, and I was like, oh, Leeds are actually going to do well from what they were saying in the opening few minutes. And no, once the penalty went in, it was all, what happened was always going to happen, and you can't be surprised. I don't think anyone can be surprised at that result or the performance of both teams. I think that's exactly what was going to happen.
I think what we did learn from this game, we've been critical of Spurs in recent games of shutting up shop, or too early, or at least trying to shut up shop and dropping off deep and inviting kind of pressure onto themselves. I think they controlled this game really well once they had the lead. They actually looked to keep the ball a little bit more so than they have done in previous games. They didn't drop back into that low block, because I think if they had sat deep and invited Leeds onto them, we know that Leeds can take advantage of that, you know. So I think they actually managed the game very well. The likes of Harry Winks and Domblé, you know, kept the ball well, and they showed a more technical side of that Spurs team than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that they've learned from those two defeats against Liverpool and Leicester, where the Liverpool game in particular, where they got what they deserved by conceding that 93rd minute winner. They completely got what they deserved, because they just sat off for the entire game. I
think of that equaliser that they conceded in the last minute against Crystal Palace as well, from the corner, and there's a handful of other examples as well of them.
It's a risky approach, Rafe. I mean, both of the, you have two approaches when you take the lead, right? You either push for more, or you sit back and try to contain your lead. Or a sneaky third approach, you try to control the game, not really too fussed about scoring, but make sure, maybe a Manchester City approach where you just try to dominate ball possession. And Spurs, I suppose they did something in between all three against Leeds. The one approach that they had been trying before, which was to sit back and invite pressure and to just be happy, content with the 1-0. That is as risky in the current in modern football as pushing for more goals.
Okay, look, Joe, Arsenal won 4-0, that the third consecutive win on the bounce. It moves them within 3 points of the likes of West Ham, Southampton, Chelsea, Aston Villa. Obviously, a couple of those teams have games to play, and we've talked about maybe how poor Chelsea have been in recent times, but it's a hell of a lot better than being 2 or 3 points off relegation.
Yeah, it is. And as well as the results, the performances in the last 3 games, particularly against Chelsea and West Brom. I mean, our Arsenal were phenomenal against West Brom, I think is fair to say. West Brom were dire, but Arsenal played the sort of football that they played under Wenger. The Kieran Tierney's goal was a magnificent solo effort, but the second goal scored by Saka and the interchange between Lacazette, Smith Rowe, and Saka in the build-up was phenomenal. It was a goal of the best under Arsene Wenger, and I'm sure if he was watching, he'd be very proud. And we haven't seen Arsenal play that type of swashbuckling attacking football since Arteta took over. It was really promising, and the team seems to be getting some confidence. Obviously, let's not get out of ourselves. Arsenal are 11th. It's 3 wins. It's good, but in the grand scheme of things, Arsenal need to sustain this form for the rest of the season and into next season. This is just the very start. This is the bare minimum to be winning games against Brighton and West Brom. So I think as good as the thing is, because of why Arsenal fans might be happier than they should be in theory about these results is because of how bad it was before. So it's just good. It's a relief to see some sort of form coming back, to see players playing with confidence again, to see the team scoring goals, to see the team keeping clean sheets. It's for those reasons. It's because of how bad it was. That's why fans are maybe getting a little bit carried away. But there's a lot of work to do, and the club should know that there's a lot of work to do in the transfer market, in letting players go this January and the summer and into next year. There are maybe 10, 15 players who need to be released or sold. And then there's about getting the right players in to replace them.
Their next two league games are at home against Crystal Palace and at home against Newcastle. They play Newcastle at home in the Cup next week as well. Those are games that in this run of form, Arsenal should really be targeting 3 wins from again. And I suppose if halfway through January, at the halfway point of the Premier League, Arsenal have suddenly gone on a run of 6 consecutive wins, and they're doing some decent business in the January window, there's a lot to be optimistic about. Now, you've been very critical on this show of Mikel Arteta. Do you think that maybe that was a little bit premature?
No, I don't, because of how bad it was. I'm giving him a lot of praise now because he put in youngsters. I wanted to see Willian dropped weeks ago. He waited until Willian had to be left out because of illness. He should have dropped him and played Saka on the right and played Emile Smith-Rowe weeks ago. A very fortuitous thing happened as well, is that Gabriel Martinelli came back from injury and they really needed him. He obviously didn't feature against West Brom, but he was vital to the wins against Chelsea and Brighton. So I thought Arteta's perseverance with the likes of Willian and the tactics he was playing, which was very slow and pedestrian, were awful in the first half of the season. And I think he was right to be criticised. And I think it's right to praise him now for doing things differently. Because with Arsenal's attacking players, there's no excuses for playing such dull, insipid football. I'm sure you would agree with that. There is absolutely no excuses for going up against mid-table teams with the likes of Aubameyang, Lacazette, Saka, Martinelli, even Willian, who has all of his experience, and playing this turgid defensive football back and sideways, pondering, looking for an opening. No, go at them, attack them, break them down with the quality of players that you have. And it was just a relief to see him finally go down that route. And I'm looking forward to having Thomas Partey back. I think that literally will be like a new signing. He's only featured in a handful of games and because of injury, of course.
For sure. Now, you mentioned Willian there briefly. You wrote an incredibly damning piece about him during the week.
Yes, we'll put a link in the description below.
As Arsenal finally near the end of the Mesut Ozil saga that seems to have dominated Arsenal conversation for the best part of nearly 2 years, is it almost fitting that they've got a new pantomime villain to fill that role, sitting there stuffing his pockets full of fans' cash while offering very, very little on the pitch in terms of energy, effort, and just general quality?
Yeah, it kind of sums up the naivety of those in charge of bringing players to the club and handing out new contracts, doesn't it? When Ozil's career is flittering out, they take a punt on Willian. I mean, what I said in the piece, why I think he's the worst transfer ever, is because of how good he was for Chelsea, because of how experienced he is, because at 32 he's still got a lot to offer, because with 7 years experience at Chelsea, he should come in and seamlessly adapt to life at the Emirates Stadium.
Bear in mind that James Milner is 35 at this stage.
I mean, this is it. You can play Cristiano Ronaldo. Look at him breaking Pele's records at the age of 34, 35. He's now scored more than Pele. We think of Pele as the greatest player ever. We're in the next few years, we're going to have to revisit that, because Messi and Ronaldo are clearly the two best, for me, I think, the two best players of all time at this stage. No, age is just a number, and to see where it's just how he should come in and immediately impact the team and immediately be on the set. He was quality for Chelsea last year. He was second for goals and top for assists for them, and he should come into Arsenal and immediately have that sort of effect on the team. And because of how poor he's been, I would call him the worst signing that Arsenal ever made, without a doubt.
He said himself that he moved from Chelsea he turned down their contract offer to move to Arsenal because he wanted to challenge for trophies. Do you think that potentially he was underwhelmed at Arsenal's start to the season and things going on around him, that he may have lost concentration or focus? Or do you think that maybe he's just packed it in, he's taken his payday and he's realized now that there's not a whole lot left to work for? Do you think he could turn it around, say, if Arsenal were suddenly back up at the top end of the table, or competing in the back end of cup competitions?
What should make him turn it around is the fact that he's lost his place. There's no way he can be starting games with the form of Saka right wing. He has absolutely no right to come back into the team. So when he does get on the pitch as a substitute, he should be playing his heart out. Why he hasn't been, I would say, is because he was told he's going to be starting week in, week out by Arteta. And as someone who's played in the league for so long, he feels he has absolutely nothing to prove. He has everything to prove coming to a club like Arsenal, who are in a rut, needing his quality badly. He had the wrong attitude coming into the club.
Okay, thanks. And look, that'll round up our kind of reviews for the weekend. There's maybe one more topical thing that I want to talk to you about. Obviously, we've seen a lot of games called off over the last week because of positive COVID tests. It came out over the weekend that several Spurs players were pictured celebrating Christmas together. Two of them subsequently tested positive for COVID. Ben Mendy was pictured out celebrating for New Year's. And it's come out this morning that apparently a handful of the Celtic team flew out to Dubai together and were pictured drinking and partying poolside. If teams are openly breaching coronavirus restrictions and subsequently games are being called off, do you think that those clubs should be not deducted points, but they should be forfeiting the games rather than postponing them?
It's a good point. I'd actually take what Mourinho said in his post-match interview after the Leeds game. I thought what he said was completely true, is that they control everything about the players once they have them in terms of when they're at the training ground. They obviously can't control them 24 hours a day. These are men who have, like any of us, who have to make the right decisions, and we're not out partying in Dubai with all of our mates and swanning off and breaking COVID restrictions left, right, and centre. These are guys who have enough maturity to not be making decisions like this, and it's very simple. The instructions from the NHS in the UK are very, very clear: is stay at home, don't go out, don't be socialising with anyone. Obviously, footballers have to go to work, so go to work. Do your socializing then, and then go home and chill out with your family. Don't be off partying and things like that. It's not the time for that this year. It's clearly not the time for that. So I think, to be fair to the clubs, they can't be policing the players 24 hours a day. But
like it's the same with social media. If players act inappropriately on social media, they can be banned by the FA or banned by the club, and action can be taken that impacts the football. It's not like players are completely absolved. Like they're not normal people. That's well and good saying they're grown men and we can't control them, but like these guys, they are representatives for the club. They are role models. It's not even just affecting the football. It's setting an example, that this kind of behavior is acceptable, and then the league are now accommodating postponements that are going to affect not just the teams that have the positive tests, but the other teams that are having their games called off. They're going to have to fit in these refixes somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Do you know what pissed me off the most about all of this is that Milivojevic was pictured at a gathering with Alexander Mitrovic. Obviously, both of them are Serbians playing for London teams. And Milivojevic started against Sheffield United. I thought that was shocking from Hodgson. You have to drop him, even if it's just to the bench. You don't start someone who's just broken COVID regulations. I think it's that was what was most disappointing.
To answer my question, if players are openly breaching restrictions, they subsequently test positive, and then games have to be postponed, should the teams forfeit those games, or is it right to postpone them?
I'm not entirely sure, Rafe. I need to think about it more. My as someone who values personal freedom a lot, I think that the clubs can't be policing. People have to be responsible themselves. And at the end of the day, it's the players who are doing this and not the clubs. But then again, the players are representatives of the clubs.
Joe, if the players are out catching COVID and they're bringing COVID into the club, into the workplace, and they're potentially passing it on to other players and staff members and endangering the families of those players and staff members. That is
shocking. It's absolutely shocking.
The
I have absolutely no time.
The clubs are given special dispensation to continue playing football, and the league is given special dispensation to continue going ahead because of the amount of testing and because of these protocols that are in place. And if the protocols aren't being followed, the football is going to end up getting called off. It's going to be postponed. We're going to have to take a 2 or 3 week break like we did last year, or potentially 2 or 3 month break to get it under control. And it's going to be chaos. So I get what you're saying in terms of the freedom to do it. But if the players, it's not like the players don't have a choice. They want to be professional footballers. There's a lot that goes with being a professional footballer, and there's an incredible amount of rewards that come with that. And it's not
of course, no doubt. Yeah. And there's a credible amount of responsibility from them now. I completely agree. I think that it's shocking, and I think that the book should be thrown at players but I think that for me, it's more the player's responsibility than if it's the case that the club are promoting things like this or allowing players to go off to Dubai, then that's fine. But I mean,
so you'd be in favor maybe of the FA banning players for a longer period of time, giving them exactly. 5 or 6 week bans or something like this.
I don't know about 5. I don't know, a 3-match suspension or something like that, and 100,000.
But if they're missing 2 matches for COVID anyway, because they got a positive test,
well then put more. They miss the matches for COVID, and then they're banned for the matches when they're
fair.
Something like that, rather than saying that the clubs have to forfeit the points. In my opinion.
Okay. Right. Well, look, thanks for that. And I suppose that's gonna wrap up the show. One last question. Do you expect Liverpool to beat Southampton tonight? Because that's a huge game.
Yeah, I do expect Liverpool to beat Southampton tonight. And that's a massive game. Liverpool need to win that.
Okay, thanks. Guys, here at PFP, we are absolutely delighted to have launched our website this week. We'll put links to that in the description below. And we're obviously trying to grow the channel as much as we can. We're moving into written media as well as the weekly podcast that we do and Joe's weekly features. That'll be back on Thursday. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, smash a like on the video, and find all that information in the description below. Thanks for watching, Joe. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Rafe. Thanks, guys. Yeah, and I'll be back with my feature on Thursday, and I'll have a written piece out at some stage this week as well. And we'll be doing that every week. And Rafe will chip in with some written pieces when his college work is less overwhelming.
Cheers. Thanks.